are gathering last-minute provisions ready to sit out what is said to be Hong Kong's longest night. You are listening to Tanya Tam on HK1.
Nothing this powerful has hit Hong Kong before. I've certainly never seen anything like it.
This isn't a normal typhoon. It's a monster.
You've got to see this. It's unbelievable.
Wind speed is 160 miles per hour.
Super typhoons are among the very worst natural catastrophes that mankind faces in terms of both loss of life and damage.
Calling all units. There's been a landslide and the entire building is down.
The destruction will be on a scale you and I have never seen before.
Downtown Hong Kong, home to 7 million people. The heart of the city is built on a small island, just 20 miles away from mainland China. So far, it has escaped a direct hit from a super typhoon. But experts now say that it is only a matter of time.
Yeah, it looks pretty good over here too. All the boats are coming back in.
Hong Kong lies next door to the breeding ground of the biggest and most powerful tropical storms on Earth. The Northwest Pacific produces an average of 27 a year, 3 times as many as the Atlantic. It is here that the right conditions could combine to create the ultimate super typhoon. A direct hit would devastate any city, but because downtown Hong Kong is an island, there are few places for residents to run. The first sign of trouble comes from 450 miles to the east.
This is Bataan Island.
The small island of Bataan would take the first hit.
Bataan Island.
Come in, Bataan.
Typhoon Viper has sustained winds of 140 miles per hour.
Repeat, please.
Repeat, 140. Come in, please.
Bataan? Bataan? Repeat, please. I've lost him. The line's dead.
Just keep trying.
Hong Kong is no stranger to typhoons. Several brush past every year, and once every 4 years, the city suffers a direct hit. But a super typhoon is beyond anything they have experienced. Scientists at the Hong Kong Observatory monitor every typhoon in the Pacific. The big ones don't usually get past Taiwan and the Philippines. A super typhoon getting through to Hong Kong is their biggest fear.
Good holidays, Dr. Chai.
Yes, thanks. Very relaxing.
Dr. Chai, come quickly.
Size and wind speed are clues that this is not an ordinary typhoon.
You've got to see this. It's unbelievable.
We have to get on to the harbor authorities. Tell them to get the big ships out. Security Bureau, please. Yes. Wind speed is 160 miles per hour.
Over the next 24 hours, a combination of events will cause the wind speeds to continue increasing, making this typhoon larger and more dangerous than any before it. But it was born no differently from others. All typhoons begin life in the western North Pacific Ocean as a cluster of small thunderstorms, which revolve around each other, eventually forming one giant rotating wheel. What makes them grow is heat. In September, the Pacific Ocean is just the right temperature. Evaporating water is the typhoon's fuel, so the further it travels over warm water, the bigger it can get, which is the other factor that makes the Pacific so dangerous. It is the biggest stretch of warm water in the world.
Hey, what are you guys looking at?
We are just looking at Typhoon Viper,
Yeah? Which way is it heading?
right along here.
Normal typhoons can reach wind speeds of up to 150 miles per hour. But at 5 days old, this one grows to 600 miles wide. It's now a monster storm. Out to sea, it's now so big that its winds are causing problems as far as 200 miles in advance of its path. But there is a weak point in the barrier, a 300-mile gap known as the Luzon Strait. Viper heads straight for it.
We still can't raise Bataan Island.
The latest bulletin reports flooding in the northern Philippines. What's the wind speed?
It's hitting about 160 miles an hour, intensifying as it enters the South China Sea.
If a typhoon comes across the northern Philippines and interacts with the mountains, it will weaken. But then once it's over the South China Sea, which is quite nice and warm in September, it stands a good chance of intensifying, particularly if it's moving rapidly.
And this is just what the super typhoon does. Now there are just 250 miles of open water lying between Vaipa and Hong Kong. All Hong Kong Fire Services Department personnel are put on standby. If authorities weren't worried before, they would be now. If any typhoon sneaks through the Luzon Strait, the threat to the city escalates dramatically. If Vaipa continues to hold its course, the city will begin to feel its effects in just a few hours. Once a typhoon breaks into the South China Sea, there is little to stop its powerful winds. At 600 miles across, Vaipa is at full size and still gaining speed. With the warm seawater as fuel for her murderous winds, Vaipa is now a super typhoon.
If you look at a big super typhoon in the Pacific, it's generating power at about 10 times the rate of the entire global electrical generation capacity as of the year 2000. It's really a phenomenal rate of power generation.
The city's first line of defense are the men and women of the Hong Kong Fire Services Department. These are the island's first responders. Preparing for the arrival of Super Typhoon Vaipa will present the biggest challenge they have ever faced, especially because evacuating the public is not an option. The Super Typhoon has entered the open waters near Hong Kong.
The destruction will be on a scale you and I have never seen before.
There is no choice but to prepare for the worst when perfect disaster returns. The people of Hong Kong have nowhere to run from a super typhoon. Because they live on a hilly island, they can only retreat to the safety of their high-rise homes. That's why building codes here are among the strictest in the world. Most skyscrapers can withstand extreme forces, but coping with the winds at the heart of a super typhoon may be another story altogether. One high-rise engineer is about to conduct a more difficult test than he has planned for.
Oh, Mr. Brewer, you need to check into security.
My name is Chuck Brewer. I'm with High Rise Engineering. I'm here to do some tests on the 30th floor.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thanks.
At this moment, there is no way of knowing if the super typhoon will hit, but authorities have to plan for the worst.
Mr. Wong, this is Annie Soho, Special Emergency Coordinator from Division 5 downtown. You've already met her colleagues. Super Typhoon Vaipa entered the South China Sea yesterday. Now, I cannot overemphasize how strong this typhoon is. At the moment, the eye is tracking due west, so only the northern edge will hit us.
With respect, sir, what if it was closer to us? I mean, just how powerful is that thing?
The outer edges are gusting at 120 to 130 miles an hour. In the center, we're looking at 200 miles per hour. We need to evacuate the commercial district at least. We have about 4 hours.
Last time we made that call, the typhoon missed us completely.
At the moment, the very best we're looking at is a disaster. I can't make it any clearer than that.
Well, surely it could miss us again?
Typhoons do not travel south, so it's not going to go away. It's your call. But if Vaipa changes direction, even slightly, the destruction will be on a scale you and I have never seen before.
There's nothing on the 30th. It's being refitted.
I know.
You'll be stuck there on your own, as long as the typhoon lasts.
Monitoring how much tall buildings sway during storms is one way to check their safety.
You understand, Mr. Brewer, that the stairs are out of action and the elevators won't work.
Don't you worry about me.
Anyone who's trapped in an apartment and that apartment loses its windows is going to be in danger in a very high wind because the wind scours out the room. It tries to suck out anything that's in there. So it's no place to be in a typhoon.
The higher you are in a building, the more it will sway. Some are engineered to move up to 3 feet either way. Checking the sway of a building helps authorities gauge whether it remains sound. Engineers are able to measure how much a building moves by attaching sensors to each column of the building. Each skyscraper is unique. How it behaves in a typhoon depends not only on its design, but also its position in relation to the other buildings around it. Although Hong Kong is engineered to the highest standards, no one can know if the city will survive unscathed from the full blast of a super typhoon with the power of Vipa. The Hong Kong Observatory now begins updating the public about the approaching typhoon with a well-established warning system.
Here at the observatory, we have a system of warning signals for tropical cyclones ranging from number 1 to number 10. And number 1 is a standby signal, and we warn people of threat of a tropical cyclone that will affect Hong Kong. And if we expect gale force winds are going to prevail over the Hawaii area within around 6 hours or so, we will issue the number 8 gale or storm signals.
With several hours to go before the typhoon hits, the numbered warning signs are posted on public information boards across the city. The higher the number, the greater the danger. A number 10 sign means that residents must return home or get to a safe place immediately. It's usually accompanied by the direct hit of a typhoon. During a direct hit, the typhoon can come within 50 miles of the city, but they don't happen very often. Of the 13 direct hits to Hong Kong since World War II, only 2 typhoons passed directly over the city. The strongest recorded winds during a direct hit were 83 miles per hour, with winds gusting up to 160 miles per hour. Long experience with the strong winds and heavy rains associated with these storms has taught authorities about the need to conduct regular safety checks on all of the city's structures. Even the harbor has to prepare. Hong Kong's port is one of the busiest in the world, and it handles over $50 billion of business a year. Typhoons rarely shut down trade completely, but an approaching super typhoon will mean the closure of the entire port. In a city as commercially minded as this, it is a precaution that will cost millions. Port authorities are responsible for instructing the container ships to leave. These huge ships will have no choice but to face the full fury of the typhoon in open sea. The larger vessels are usually safe there. They're designed to cope with the wind and waves at the edge of the typhoon. The biggest cargo ships are rarely troubled by rough weather. They are so long, up to 1,000 feet, that most waves are like ripples and pass by harmlessly. But even they will find the going tough in a super typhoon. The wave troughs can become as long as the vessel itself and can force the ship to surf down towering swells up to 80 feet high. This is a situation captains must negotiate carefully.
The captains try everything they can to get out of the path of the storm, but the storms can change course, so it's not always possible. And if the storm gets very close, the barometer can drop very fast. The waves become very steep and they threaten the ship. And then if he's unfortunate enough to get really into the core of the typhoon, the situation there is actually beyond most people's ability to imagine.
Pack everything up and move yourselves inside, okay? Move on!
a new weather system forces the Super Typhoon to change course.
Viper has swung around almost 40 degrees. We'll be facing a direct hit.
Perfect Disaster returns after this. In Hong Kong, 7 million residents prepare for the onslaught of a passing Super Typhoon. Fire services personnel have only a matter of hours to prepare the 5 divisions of the city for whatever is coming.
Hey, I need all this cleared away. Just clear everything from the street and pack everything up and move yourselves inside, okay? Let's go. Come on, move on.
In the high winds of a Super Typhoon, any unsecured object can be transformed into a lethal missile.
These become weapons of mass destruction in the hands of the wind. And so the more get smashed, the more things become airborne, the more debris you have, the more things get smashed. And so you rapidly progress to a state of total destruction.
Fire services personnel take special steps to stay safe during the storm.
There will be a lot of flying objects. We use this wire screen to protect the windshield of the fire engines. We have to take shelter sometimes, but still we have to respond to an emergency.
The city counts down the hours, while out at sea the Super Typhoon continues to grow more dangerous. The winds are still increasing, but even more lethal is the water locked within the swirling clouds. Every hour, the heart of the storm sucks up another 100 million tons more, the equivalent of the entire Amazon River. As the water vapor rises to the stratosphere, it cools and condenses into more clouds, which will let loose a deluge of rain as the typhoon hits land. Traveling at 20 miles per hour, this whirlwind of water is approaching fast. It's a bad situation that is about to get worse. Forecasting exactly where any typhoon is going to hit is a huge challenge, which requires consideration of hundreds of different sources of information. They can seem to travel in straight lines, but typhoons can quickly turn erratic if they collide with other weather systems that can force them to change course. Conditions in the jet stream can also have an effect.
Viper is still heading due west, but something's not right.
What do you mean?
She's powerful, but the South China Seas is cooler than the Pacific. That must be having an effect. Have we got the printout from the high-altitude weather balloon?
It just came in.
There must be something else pulling the strings.
The last condition needed to turn this scenario into the perfect disaster occurs at the top of the atmosphere, where wind currents like the jet stream flow.
Often when typhoons move into the far western part of the Pacific or the South China Sea, they begin to interact with weather systems that are coming from higher latitudes. And we have waves in the jet stream that can bend down and literally pick up a typhoon and carry it off to the north. We call that recurvature, and it's a very common scenario for storms in that region.
Look here. See this massive area of cold high pressure? It's moving north, and it's pulling Viper north along with it.
The weather is conspiring to push the typhoon.
You're right.
Straight at Hong Kong.
Viper has swung around almost 40 degrees. We'll be facing a direct hit.
Any boat racing for Hong Kong would now be in the firing line. The chaotic conditions in the atmosphere around the typhoon affect communications. Cell phones and satellite systems can be disrupted. Avoiding the eye of the typhoon is vital, but with GPS systems disrupted, some boats may be unable to navigate themselves away from danger. Now the fire services department begins securing small craft. With the big ships gone, clearing the water of ferries and tugs is now the priority. Much of Hong Kong's business is conducted by water, so thousands of boats will now need to find shelter. The docks and marinas present the biggest problem.
I know it's bad news when you arrive in Soho.
Once all the thousands of smaller boats are tied up and secured, there is little more they can do but wait. The first stage of Super Typhoon Viper hits Hong Kong.
Stand by all units.
When we return. Rough surf and heavy rain are Hong Kong's first signs that the Super Typhoon is about to strike. With much of downtown located at the foot of the hills, a sudden downpour hits the peaks and washes quickly down, flooding the buildings below. But Hong Kong has a unique line of defense. Authorities fight back with engineering. This enormous reservoir is one of several built beneath the city. They are designed to catch the water that would otherwise inundate the neighborhoods. Few cities are better equipped to deal with excessive rain.
It can hold 100,000 cubic meters of water. So when it rains very heavily, bigger than the drain can hold, water will be directed into this underground tank. This is where the water comes in, between the gap of the roof and the lintel. In Hong Kong, at times, you can receive like 100 millimeters of rain in an hour.
The watermark here shows that over 16 feet of rainwater was collected in just a matter of hours. A grid of canals like this send the water through a giant storm drain and into the sea. Hong Kong has installed over 1,200 miles of them to siphon excessive rainfall away from the city. Even with such extensive flood protection, Hong Kong may be overwhelmed by the amount of rain unleashed by a super typhoon. Weather experts at the Hong Kong Observatory continue to monitor the super typhoon closely. 10 miles above the city, the jet stream continues to push the super typhoon north toward Hong Kong. Experts are expecting a direct hit. Downtown Hong Kong is now virtually a ghost town. Before returning to headquarters, fire service workers check their assigned areas and dispatch any stragglers to safety. The empty city seems to be holding its breath. Residents have been advised to secure doors and windows and to stay inside until further notice. They've been warned to expect torrential rain, high winds, and flying debris during what might be Hong Kong's longest night.
Super typhoons are among the very worst natural catastrophes that mankind faces in terms of both loss of life and damage. Is simply because the combination of wind and flash floods caused by heavy rains is so devastating to so many places. So they are something to be reckoned with.
Communications are now failing completely. Time is running out to get to safety. Then it happens.
Viper has arrived.
As the city holds its breath, Super Typhoon Viper begins her attack. The rain and wind quickly intensify. It is a relentless battering that will go on for the next 12 hours. The tallest buildings begin to sway in the increasing wind. Whether they will survive a typhoon of this magnitude is not known. The observatory monitors are showing wind gusts up to 184 miles per hour. The outer edges of the super typhoon are showing sustained winds closer to 80 miles per hour. But winds are much faster at the center, in the eye wall. A 40-mile wide and 10-mile high cylinder of churning cloud. There, winds are now reaching 200 miles per hour. As the edges of the typhoon hit land, it isn't long before the winds are strong enough to cause devastation. .200-mile-per-hour winds from a super typhoon devastate Hong Kong harbor. Then one of the most destructive weapons in the typhoon's arsenal strikes, a 25-foot storm surge. The force of the oncoming typhoon pushes up the water in front of it. This surging mass of water is harmless at sea, but is deadly when it hits the land. The worst storm surge ever to hit Hong Kong killed 11,000 people.
Storm surge picks up anything in its way: boats, sailboats, motorboats, piers. Storm surge is moving quite rapidly and will crush anything in its path.
What? No. I said a lateral sway of almost half a meter. It's like being on a ship up here. Oh, I'm telling you, John, either these sensors aren't calibrated properly, or this building's swaying more than I've ever seen.
As the center of the super typhoon approaches, the winds escalate. Within a matter of hours, gusts will exceed 230 miles per hour, more than any structure is designed to take.
Buildings in Hong Kong are designed to withstand a wind of 120 or 130 miles per hour. When you start getting much above that, things begin to happen that aren't supposed to happen. Windows pop out of high-rise buildings. You can have an entire high-rise who basically loses all its windows. And as soon as the windows are gone, the wind sucks out everything: chairs, furniture, desks. And so there's an awful lot of debris flying around in the air. This debris acts like missiles.
The result is a chain reaction. With the reinforced glass windows smashed, the wind tears through the interior, clearing an entire floor in seconds. Glass and debris from one building can fly into another, starting a lethal wave of destruction. When a super typhoon makes a direct hit, it bombards its target with high winds and torrential rain for hours on end. The only let-up from its relentless attack is a brief period when the eye, at its center, passes overhead.
Come in. Where? Could you repeat that, please? Coordinates again?
Yeah, it's about 50 minutes away. We should get a break then. Look at this. Dr. Chai, we've got 20 inches of rain on Victoria Peak alone.
My guess is Piper will drop at least 30 inches of rain before she's done.
With the unprecedented deluge expected from Super Typhoon Vipa, another threat now moves rapidly up the scale of dangers. Hong Kong's steep terrain makes it prone to landslides. Locked within the swirling clouds of the super typhoon are billions of tons of water. As the edge of the storm hits the city's hills, the clouds are forced to rise. As it does, the cloud cools, dumping massive amounts of rain. It's equivalent to 4 Olympic swimming pools full of water being dumped on Hong Kong every second.
The first thing the rain does is to saturate the soil. And if it's on a steep slope, it just breaks free of the underlying rock and you get a landslide. And that is a truly horrible experience because it just takes everything out in its path.
To protect against landslides, the government set up the Geotechnical Engineering Office, responsible for the management of all of Hong Kong's hillsides. Every slope is labeled, numbered, and recorded. Many have been covered in concrete or secured with concrete pins and wire mesh. But there are still many slopes not yet covered. The high-rise apartments on these hills are home to many of Hong Kong's 7 million residents. During a typhoon, these buildings are their only places of refuge.
There's been a landslide in the mid-levels. The caller says an entire building is down. I repeat, an entire building is down. Stand by, all units.
As the eye of Super Typhoon Vipa approaches, the people directly beneath it will experience a dramatic drop in wind speeds and see clear night skies above.
Near the center of the tropical cyclone, the air is actually being forced to sink. And as the air sinks, then what happens is that any sort of water drops will be evaporated. And that's why you see clear sky, no clouds, and very nice weather.
Traveling at 20 miles per hour, this 40-mile wide window will not be open for long. The eye of the storm closes, bringing the worst. Hong Kong has been battered for hours by the lethal winds of a super typhoon. Now, as the eye of the storm passes over the city, the weather is temporarily calm. Emergency crews have just 2 hours to help those in need of rescue before the typhoon returns.
Calling all mounted units. This is 2107 mid-levels rise. It's a major incident. Expect many casualties.
Down in the harbor, the worst of the storm surge has passed, and those who survived now struggle to safety. Emergency teams are back on the streets. The most common injuries they find are broken limbs caused by collapsing buildings and flesh wounds caused by flying debris.
My husband is still trapped down in his workshop. Under there. Please help him. Okay.
After the first edge of the eye wall has passed, there is an inevitable wait until the second edge hits. But with the next strike comes a twist. Because of the circular flow of the winds, in the second attack they will be coming from the opposite direction, reversing the path of destruction.
This is just the lull before it all kicks off again.
Buildings that before were partly sheltered by the mountains or other buildings will now be exposed to the fury of the returning typhoon.
I can't let you stay up here.
Damage assessment will have to wait. There is only time to deal with the most critical human emergencies.
All
units. Calling all units. Suspend all rescue operations. I repeat, suspend all rescue operations. Out TP. It is too dangerous to continue. Repeat, too dangerous to continue.
Mr. Brewer, you haven't time for that. You've got to go down, right now.
Okay. Sure. I'm coming.
It is now touch and go for those still trapped beneath the rubble. Only minutes remain before the storm returns. Over 90% of survivors in collapsed buildings are found within the first 8 hours. After 5 days, the chances of survival are minimal.
Oh, I got it, just stay calm. Pull yourself out. Come on, we've got to get out of here. Just hold on, you're coming down.
The return of Viper is sudden and violent. Already weakened, the city's power lines eventually fail and blackouts plunge it into darkness. Security systems, lighting, and communications networks are all disabled. Getting the help to where it's needed becomes a problem. With the main power grid down, the emergency services must rely on their vehicles for light. As the wind streams between the densely packed buildings, it is funneled into powerful and unpredictable gusts, but the end is in sight.
I know this may not be very much comfort to you, but this swaying, the building's doing just what it was designed to do. Relax, it's a good thing.
Just hope you're right, Mr. Brewer.
I'd better check my figures. This wind is stronger than the last one. Now, there should still be some juice in this thing. Well, what do you know? The wind's a lot stronger than the last one.
But it won't last much longer. Once Typhoon Viper hits mainland China, it is cut off from the warm water that drives it. With no fuel, the storm will weaken and die.
Typhoons are children of the ocean, and they draw their energy from the heat of the ocean. As soon as they go on land, there is no more energy, and it's just a question of how long does it take them to dissipate. It's a big machine, it's running very fast, but it winds down surprisingly quickly.
Emergency power, quickly, please. Already the wind speed is dropping off. It'll all be over soon. Anybody heard any word from their families?
With many of the communications networks still out, there is now a period of anxiety as people wait to hear news of their loved ones. Across the devastated city, people can already hear the typhoon dying down. Backup generators begin kicking in.
Where's it taking us to?
We're back on level 30.
The buildings may have survived, but with so many broken windows, everything inside has been destroyed. The city below has also suffered. Roads washed out. Buildings collapsed. People searching for missing loved ones. As soon as Viper has passed, the emergency services crew begins their work. After being savaged by a typhoon of this size, there will be an enormous task ahead of them. Hong Kong is a high-tech machine that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is a city that stands on the frontiers of modern technology. Despite man-made hillsides, vast drainage tunnels, and skyscrapers built to the highest standards, the city is no match for this giant of nature's forces. In a matter of hours, a super typhoon could bring Hong Kong to its knees. It will leave thousands dead or injured and destroy countless homes and businesses. The cost will run into billions.
We look at hurricanes and typhoons globally. We see a pronounced upward trend over the last 30 to 50 years in their power, the total amount of energy they release over their lifetimes, because their winds are getting stronger and they're lasting longer. And this increase in power very well matches the increase in tropical ocean temperatures that we have also seen over this period, which most of us believe are a consequence of global warming.
So far, a typhoon of this scale has never hit Hong Kong. But as our oceans continue to warm, many climatologists believe that the likelihood of a perfect disaster like this increases every year.